Welcome, everybody. Let me introduce the man behind some of the greatest 90s television themes of our youth. He's done music for VR Troopers, Mummies Alive, Dragon Ball Z, X-Men, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Power Rangers Zeo, Power Rangers Turbo, Power Rangers in Space, Power Rangers SPD, and more. Please welcome, for my very first interview on the Morphing Grid, Ron Wasserman.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? This is Ron Wasserman. Pleased to be here.
Thank you very much for taking my interview.
Oh, my pleasure. So what shall we discuss today?
So for the first segment, we're going to do a little fact or fiction on Wikipedia.
Aha. The outdated, weird Wikipedia monster. Let's do it.
The infallible source of all knowledge, edited by many, many people over many, many years.
Yes, and I'm the only one that's never allowed to correct any information on myself there. It's funny how it works.
Yes, absolutely. So we'll start right off the bat. Born Ronald Aaron Wasserman in Encino, California on September 2nd, 1961.
Correct. They got that right. So far, we're batting 1,000.
Yes. So for the early career, says you were fascinated with music since you were 3 years old. His early music bands include Hollywood headliners Betty Boop and The Beat, formed by SAG actress Lucretia Sarita Russo and Ron Keenan.
Yeah, I didn't know she was a SAG actress, but it was created. No, I believe that. I haven't seen her since we had a. Oh, God, I don't even remember what year it would have been, like 1988, till we stood in the middle of Hollywood Boulevard in traffic screaming at each other. That's the last time I've seen Lucy. So, but, yes, she was the singer, and she and Kanan did start the band. And I ended up joining it. I don't know how long it was even together, but, yes, they started it.
What happened with the screaming match?
Sometimes at that age, I'm going to be very careful here. Certain people, not me, certain people get involved with other people who might be into certain activities and doing certain things that makes their brain a little crazy if they do too much of those activities. And that's what the fight was about then. It was a dark period for some people. And so that was my official, I'm quitting or you're fired or I don't know what's going to happen moment. It was just getting too hard to deal with.
Gotcha.
At that period. And the band was really good and so close to record deals all the time, but something always went wrong. So I was kind of itching to move on anyways. And we did with another singer after that. We auditioned like 700 singers over the following 15 months and found this one gal and whose name I can't remember. And I think we played out another 6 or 8 months, and then that was the end of the band. As happens to a million bands.
Right. In the mid-1980s, Ron started a band with present-day actress E.G. Daily.
Well, I did not start it with her. E.G. saw me playing in one of those months with the new singer because the Betty Boop band was like huge in Los Angeles, and E.G. Daily saw me and said, "Hey, do you want to be musical director for this band? I just have my album on A&M Records is just coming out," and this was right before she had a hit song called "If You Want My Love, Say It, Say It." So I said, sure, and I joined that band and, was in charge of, as MD musical director. And it was a great band because we had this bass player, Matt Bissonette, who went on to play with David Lee Roth, Matt Sorum on drums that went on to play with Guns N' Roses.
Oh, wow.
I cannot remember the guitar player's name. It was Randy something, and I think, and we just, I don't know what happened to him. And it was a great adventure for about almost a year until, for whatever reason, A&M just cut the purse strings and killed that deal. Just as we were getting ready to go do a European tour. And I had my passport, and I was so excited. And that was that.
So moving forward here, says you filled in at Saban Entertainment one afternoon and eventually stayed there for 6.5 years because of your connection with Ron Wasserman.
Yeah, he called me into, he had a home studio, and I was engineering a ton of little demo projects and whatnot, and all songwriting, no scoring. And I went in '89 to work with this one composer, and for 7 hours, he sat around and smoked dope. And then for hour 8, he wrote 3 cues in 1 hour. He just banged them out, 3 little 1-minute cues with alternate endings. So the music editors can, instead of it having, let's say, an abrupt ending, it tails off in a thing or goes from a major chord to a minor chord. So I went, hey, composer guy, since I said he was smoking dope for 7 hours, I don't want to say who. It was not Shuki Levy or anything, believe me. And I said, how much do you get paid for this? He goes, $150 a cue. And I went, you're getting $450 to work an hour? I said, I got to learn about this business right away. So I started learning more about it and volunteered a lot of time, and then they would hire me part-time. But I pretty much lived at Saban. That was when they were on Ventura Boulevard out in Studio City. I just stayed there and wouldn't leave and was mixing everything for the composers and started handing in what I thought were little bits of score and cues. And luckily some of the producers there were nice enough to tear me a new asshole and say, you're songwriting, you're not scoring, you're writing little song grooves here. And over time, I finally started to get it. And I think maybe I had 1 or 2 little teeny things and some shows. It seems to me there was a show with John Candy called Camp Candy. I maybe got a few little bits of music in it. And they did a ton of direct-to-home video stuff. And they would say, hey, want to take a crack at the theme? I would go, great. But my themes were so, I wasn't writing for little kids, or I kind of was, but I was writing these incredibly energetic, fast stuff that I thought kids would be interested in. And Saban was very established to this very like low-key, slow, kiddie, childish type of themes for a lot of their shows. You know, really silly, stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And so I kept pushing that stuff, and they kept telling me I was crazy. And then in 92, I think it was, it was 92, and I was going in the studio for a night to work on something else, on a song with the band Fisher, which my wife was a singer of. We weren't called that back then. And ex-wife, I should say. Sorry. Oops, sorry. And they came in and said, we need something for a Fox presentation tomorrow for this Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And I said, any direction at all? And they said, no direction at all. Haim likes the word go, if you want to use the word go. Haim Saban, the head of the company. And I just remember being kind of pissed because I wanted to work on this other song. And I remember calling Ron Wasserman once and going, once again, Mighty Morphine? What are we saying here? Is it morphine? He goes, no, it's morphin. You know, it still would have been proper because they're morphine. But so I fought with that a bit, and literally from sitting down to getting it done and throwing on what I thought would just be my guide vocal took 2.5 hours. And I went on and worked on the other song, and I didn't think about it. And the next day they called and they said, Fox loves it. And I said, great. You got any ideas on who can sing the thing? They said, no. Fox loves it. It's done. Even the rough mix you did, that's the mix. We're not going to change a thing. I went, cool. And, you know, my agreement, as it was with every composer working at Saban at that time, they were work for hires. You were getting paid hourly. You were not going to see anything on the back end. It's what you agreed to going in.
Okay.
It was like getting paid to go to college. So I figured, oh, cool, I've got a theme. I mean, it wouldn't even amount to like, hey, great theme, here's a bonus. I mean, it's just nothing. It was just part of your gig. And this goes on in more places in this business than was ever really discussed publicly. Some of the huge, biggest name, not John Williams, some of the biggest film composers, I mean, they have rooms full of composers doing the work for them, and yet their name goes on it. It's a normal practice in the business of paying dues. And so I got it, and I remember Fox wasn't interested that much in the show, and I believe Haim had done some sort of bartering deal with X-Men saying, I'll do post-production at either a discount or for free if you'll just air Power Rangers show. And they said, okay. And I think they gave it an 8 a.m. or 8:30 time slot, which is the kiss of death for a kid show because all the kids are in school.
Right, yeah.
And it caught fire, and the tardy rates in America skyrocketed because kids were staying home to watch this show. And so Fox immediately placed, I don't know how many they'd originally ordered, probably 13. And so I know immediately 52 were ordered. And they they were airing it at, 6:37, 7:38, 3:30. It was crazy. And the show just exploded, to everyone's surprise.
So basically, I guess you've answered several of my questions related to the fact or fiction, but basically, so that the hourly stuff and not getting royalties afterwards is the whole Aaron Waters, Mighty Raw situation in a nutshell.
Yeah, well, the thing is, Ron Wasserman, they didn't, since I was doing everything, playing everything, mixing it, producing it, they came in, Aaron Waters, my middle name's Aaron, and Wasserman means water man. I kind of created Aaron Waters as somebody to yell to who wasn't working, that wasn't working hard enough when he was doing his vocals. I know this sounds crazy, and no, I don't have a split personality. But it just became a game for me because unlike today where you sing, you get it within the ballpark and then you sit around and edit and fix everything in a computer, this was still all on 2-inch tape. So all those vocals, all that stacking had to be done as perfectly as possible. There was no possible way to edit it. So there were times I would get pretty pissed at myself because I'm not a singer. It's the first thing I ever even sang on was that theme, other than a guide vocal for a real singer. So I had to develop this whole character and persona and somebody to get pissed at and somebody to push harder to get the performance out of. And so Aaron Waters was born, and then later on they threw in this stupid Mighty Raw crap. And I said, this is going to confuse everybody. But that was an executive there that said, well, this is how I'm going to put my stamp on it, and I'm going to give you this name to use. And I know that's what they do, so that later they can go, I thought up that name. So it gives them great satisfaction without realizing how it was so simple and everybody understood it. And then they're like, what's this Mighty Raw stuff? I'm like, it's just, I wish that hadn't happened.
Yeah,
it's so silly what they did, and it was just more confusing. On the other side, it may have been a brilliant move because I never met a single, I was pretty much sequestered, and that was done so that I could keep, and I had nothing against this, but they didn't want anybody from Fox to, come in and say, hey, we're doing this other show, and maybe you'd be interested, and then I might think about leaving Saban because I was cranking out so much stuff for them. Because I was doing that, and X-Men and Sweet Valley High and anything anybody needed for a commercial. I mean, the hours were insane. It was just day after day. Well, I went in at night so I didn't have to deal with the executives all day, just because it was easier to work. So almost always from 6 p.m. to 4 a.m., just certainly Monday through Friday, and then weekends without air conditioning, usually in there for 8-10 hours, just dying because they wouldn't run the air on the weekend because it was in a big office building by then.
There's more of an ability focus in on what you're doing instead of being like, oh, this person wants to talk to you, or they need you to do this and that. You just, let that puppy run.
And people don't, in general, and it's not their fault, but they don't understand the creative process. It's not like you're approaching a certain set sequence of things to do where you just go, oh, I've got to get through this paperwork tonight. It's a creative process, and interruptions can destroy what could be brilliant moments. And too many distractions can also make you just say, oh, well, screw it. Today I have writer's block and nothing's happening, and then it's an unproductive day. So you need that time to just be absolutely isolated. And that was easier then because I would just turn the one phone off. Now, of course, everybody, there is no more privacy. There's nowhere to get away from anything. So if I turn my phone off now when I'm working, my son can come in and go, hey, someone's looking for you, because I'll text him. I'm like, damn. Yeah, it'd be good if there was just, it'd be great if on iPhones you just had one auto reply. There probably is, but an instant auto reply. Like, let's say you would hit some sequence of buttons, and anything that came in, you just instantly send back a text saying, working right now, we'll check this at, you could literally leave the outgoing text to go to anybody. Say, I will get back to you after 9 p.m. tonight. Just so people got a response, instead of saying, oh no, he didn't answer the text, let's email. Oh no, let's go on Facebook, he must be dead, it's been an hour.
Or maybe they could program one that has like, I will respond after this time, and it's like a picture of Lord Zed just staring into your soul.
Yeah.
To be like, okay, I take you seriously. Okay, I accept your text.
Yeah, or the Red Ranger flipping you off. Something creative like that. Yeah. Photoshop that in.
Yes, that would be great.
Yeah, that would be fun.
So it says later on that you left Saban in '96 citing exhaustion. Talk about the factors related to that, because I think you've alluded to it, but like specifically, what were the certain things that led to that decision?
Well, the abuse, not from Saban himself, but the middle management abuse was getting a little bit weirder. Because once something becomes so successful and you do so much, the slightest drop starts freaking everybody out, not me. And it's the natural cycle of things. But they start pushing harder, and more people wanted to, again, be able to control what was going on with the music and getting involved. And I was getting a bit more frustrated. And really, I was just so freaking run down from this constant work. I hardly had any breaks at all. And so I remember I was flying back with my ex from West Virginia or New York or something. I remember taking off in the plane and just looking at the wing, and then all of a sudden we're landing in LA. I mean, that's how tired and frustrated I was. So I just looked at her and I said, I'm gonna go have a meeting with Haim and just say, either give me an equal share. This wasn't about greed. It was just that would have given me the oomph and the chutzpah to continue that kind of a schedule. So I set up a meeting with Haim, and I said, I want just a third of the writers, which is 12.5% of the total income. So just give me a third, do a 10-year contract. I'll keep writing the themes. I would like 2 months off to just go sleep. And I may be back in 3 weeks. Just let me go somewhere without being, just anywhere, Hawaii, and just rest. I need to rest. I need to get my brain back together. And he just said no. And I said, so no negotiation, nothing? And he said, nope, this is what we do it. And he said, you knew it. And I said, absolutely. I'm not complaining about the past. I'm saying from this point forward, I'm not asking for anything from, nothing's to be retroactive. And he said, nope, we don't do that. And I said, I quit. I said, then I'll turn in my notice tomorrow, and I'm out of here in 2 weeks. And that's what I did. I don't even know if I stayed the whole 2 weeks or if they said go home and work. And then from that point on, they would just call me, and they would say, I remember with Dragon Ball Z, they said, we've got this thing, this anime piece of crap, do whatever you want on it. Not a theme, but just scoring it. And I would work on it at home. It was such a primitive setup. It was like 2 samplers that made all the sounds, a VHS machine, and my 19-inch tube television, maybe 21 inches, and just sat in the living room and scored the show. But it was so fun doing it that way. And there was never a single note on the thing. And I didn't learn until years and years later that show became anything. I thought it was just something that disappeared. And I'm glad to say, because I told them when I left, I said, you will never have a hit theme again without me. And he never did. And it wasn't said in a cruel way. It was just that this is what I specialize in even more than scoring. I can write a hell of a theme, and you will never have that again. You can have everybody try to write this. Nobody understands this stuff like I do for this age group, especially. And they never did, which is why they keep recycling. All the years he had, it's just the recycling of the theme again and again and again and again and again. Just to nauseam.
Yeah, and I think it's also to do with, the nostalgia craze that's going on right now. And continuing forward with the Wikipedia, so you left Saban and you started a band with your then girlfriend, Kathy Fisher, who you later married, and the band Fisher won an award for most downloaded song on the internet in 2000.
Yeah, so we couldn't get signed to save our life, and that night I was writing the Power Rangers theme. I was writing another song for Fisher called Breakable, which ended up being used in, I think, 1997 or 98 for a film with Gwyneth Paltrow and Ethan Hawke called Great Expectations, and De Niro. So it's in there. The soundtrack comes out. We get singled out worldwide as the next big thing because although she sounded a bit like Sarah McLachlan, it was very emotional stuff as everybody was scattering in the world to figure out what the next thing would be musically. So it was kind of not that song, but what would happen later was kind of like pre-Adele without the ability to belt like Adele. But the songwriting was just as good. So we had that. We're stuck under contract with Atlantic for a year, who doesn't pick up the option, and finally lets us go. And then we get called to go play the Lilith Fair, which Sarah McLachlan was running around the country at that time. And we found that we had a very large audience. So I decided to do what was considered the kiss of death in 97 and do our own CD because, it was getting easier to record stuff at home digitally, but it also meant that you couldn't get a deal. So I did that, and then the MP3 craze was just starting, especially at this place, mp3.com. And I uploaded some songs, and I remember the first 24 hours, 20 downloads. I went, oh, this is so cool. And then it went 50, and then 5,000 and 8,000, and then we were number one on the charts there with this piano vocal ballad called I Will Love You, I think for almost 2 years.
Wow.
And so CNN, and now there's no money in it at this time, but I'm used to that, right, from Saban in my whole life.
Yes.
Of course, another famous thing and nothing. So, but I just accepted it, but then as this whole online thing with Napster and all that started gaining so much traction with the press, all of a sudden CNN is calling us and comes to us to do interviews. Time Magazine comes to us. Fox comes to us. And so now there's a huge buzz on us. And now the record companies start calling and they say, we want to sign you. And I said, great. But I have one stipulation, and that is I know there's a 98% failure rate, and I want the rights back to our indie CD, which I'm now licensing like crazy for film and television. I want the rights back to that should our deal fail. And every label I spoke to just went, no, we won't do that. And I said, well, then we don't have a deal. And they said, well, let's see if we can hammer something out. And they would up their offer on money. And I said, it's not about that. I want to own this stuff later on if the deal fails. And finally, so I kept passing on. I'm talking to record company VPs and presidents and passing on them, which made them crazier because no little punk motherfucker from a band does that to them. Nobody. They're used to having their ass kissed. And all of a sudden, I'm like the damn father telling them no. And they're like, what can I do to help you? Because that's how those people are. They're all insecure and weird. So it kept just getting weirder and weirder. And it's just plain odd. And finally, I remember in December of 99, spoke to Doug Morris, who was head of all Universal Music Group. And he said, well, what can we do to make the deal happen? I said, just give me the rights back if it fails after one, because I'm going to want out of the deal if it fails. He said, done. And on Christmas Eve, 99 at 10 p.m., I remember we signed a deal memo and I faxed it off and we had our deal. And we had a great 2-year adventure and became big at radio, but there were terrible distribution problems. So we would roll into a town, and I mean, it was weird. Just, thousands of people showing up to see us, but nobody could buy the damn CDs because there was literally a problem pressing CDs with the company that did distribution. Mm-hmm. So after that run, they wanted to pick up the second CD. I was frustrated as hell, and I wanted out of the deal. So I terminated, got the rights back to the first one, and literally the next morning was just getting called, from every major show saying, so now we can deal with you directly on this? And I said, yeah. So I was just all day, all I did was fill out paperwork and get license fees. It was wonderful. We were making more than anybody selling, that was double platinum. Just out of sitting in a bedroom and saying, okay, yeah, that's enough money. We'll take that.
It's fantastic. That's really cool.
You have to be ballsy and you have to know your business. And that's another thing I owe to Saban days. Besides just being sequestered, I mean, I spent a lot of time with the business people there to say, how does this work? Tell me about publishing. Tell me about what comes in. And they really went through and explained it. And I said, okay. So you can, if you know this side of it, you can, it gives you a lot more power to have some strength in negotiations when you finally can do it. Up to that point, I had no power. But anyways, after I'd left Saban with scoring, I ended up scoring video games. So I got to work with Jim Carrey on a Ace Ventura, and then Monty Python did 2 titles with them, and like little games like Tamagotchi and all these other things. And then that business went under. And then I ended up at Deke Entertainment, where I did things like Mummies Alive and Horseland and all these other crazy shows. And this is all during the record deal, and just commercial after commercial also coming in. So it was great. So really, from the day Power Rangers kind of hit in 92 up until mid 2017, early 2018, I only had two or three 1-week breaks. It was just unhinged, the amount of work.
That's incredible. Wow.
We grew up poor, and then it got way worse for me before even being at Saban in the 80s. So when you're that broke, and it finally comes in, and it's all I really could do very well my whole life. So it was just easy. I got exhausted, but I just was able to just keep going at it. I was never sitting there dying. And so the last show I was under contract for was the Thundermans at Nickelodeon, which I think we did about 107 episodes. And when that wound down and we mixed the last one, and it must have been 2017. I can't quite remember what year it was. And so I had always been a mountain biker, and I started mountain biking more and more and more and more. And then September 2018, I was going over the side of a hill and just had to crash from hell and just crystallized my right elbow, which is almost the worst thing to happen to a composer.
Yeah.
So I had the first surgery, and then they took it out of the cast, and the arm is stuck, at a 45-degree angle. And I went, oh, no, barely moves up, barely moves down. Went to a specialist, while doing physical therapy. He looked at it and said, well, I think it's the hardware. I'm going to go in there and clean everything up. He spent a couple hours, removed 20 screws and 2 plates, took it out of the cast, and it just barely moved, kept up with physical therapy. Then he knocked me out again. They do a manipulation where they just knock you out, and they force the arm to open and close, so it breaks up scar tissue. And then they cast it and put you in a cast so it holds the arm straight for 2 weeks,
right.
and the arm is swelling inside this cast with no give. That was the only painful part. Yeah. And now, yesterday, it's funny, we're talking, I just got the notice. So tomorrow I think we'll be somewhere around visit 117, the physical therapy. And I'm like 85, 90% cured. It's still healing.
Goodness.
We still make progress on it. We made a lot of progress the other day, and it's still healing, which is astounding to me. That's how bad the injury was, because they had to reform, they had to rebuild the whole joint and reattach everything. So for you mountain bikers out there, get the $37 elbow pads and knee pads. It's believe me, you'll thank me if you ever fall on your elbow.
Oh my God. Yeah, so I'm assuming you didn't do that prior to that particular instance.
No, I'd actually been thinking about it, and I went like, I don't know. Do I need these? It's going to feel really restrictive. I mean, I crash a lot, little crashes, but I don't really ever get hurt, all the stupid stuff. And so that was that's been most of my 2018. I hadn't really watched television for 25 years, so I caught up on everything I ever wanted to see. And I think maybe I've seen everything ever made. I mean, I think I started off with, I can't remember, Sons of Anarchy, and then moved to Breaking Bad and Just Call Saul. And I was just obsessing and binge watching, which was a real godsend considering what I was going through. And then in mid-August, then Kathy Fisher, we'd been together since '89. We both decided we'd had enough of each other, and so we decided to split up. So we've been apart since September, but getting along perfectly fine through the whole thing, which caused a lot of weird shock with all the Fisher fans. But, life goes on. So it's been a big year of change, and a lot of stuff is heating up for next year. I'm working on a massive video game called The Nothing. I've been working on that since 2017. Mm-hmm. And a couple NBC shows I'm just a contributing composer on. And I think next year I'll be ready to go back under contract on some sort of a series or something. So that's where I am in life. It's kind of great. It's been a great adventure.
But now we're going to take you back a few years, because now it's time to get into the fun stuff, the non-Wikipedia stuff that I've been dying to ask for a little while. And and for me personally, this is like really cool. So again, thank you for being here, and thank you for doing this interview. Like, talking to people related to Power Rangers is like big for me. Like, it's like fulfilling a childhood dream, so to speak. And God willing, I can get the big interviews, but that's a little far off. I'm just trying to make connections right now with what I'm doing here, and just asking the questions that I want to ask.
That's the way it should be.
So I watched the video. I can't remember the name of the place. It was Nerd something, that did the video on how awesome the X-Men theme was.
Mm-hmm.
The more hi-hats thing really made me laugh.
Oh, right.
In terms of accomplishing its goals and its quality, like that theme is just so iconic and great, and probably the best theme of the 90s. What went into the making of that from your end? Like, what creatively did you put into that?
That was just we need a theme for X-Men, and I remember saying with vocals, and I said, no, we should do instrumental in this case because it's animation, and we've got the other shows all have vocals on them, so let's go for instrumental. And all I remember is it being 2 or 2.5 weeks of, I do not remember how long it took to get the first draft. I don't know how it sounded after the first night, but all I know is every night afterwards was just a stack of notes, and it kept coming down to more hi-hat, just filling it more and more because you couldn't hear the hi-hat because there was so many. It wasn't the initial thing, but it'd be like, oh, the bass needs to be higher, the bass line. Okay, push the bass line. Well, now we can't hear the hi-hat. I'm like, the hi-hat is playing at the same rhythm, it's playing 16th notes like the bass line. Well, now it sounds like too much hi-hat over the bass line. Push the bass up. Well, now we can't hear the hi-hat. Wait a minute, there's an empty space. What do you think you can put in there? Somebody had the idea for a big gong. How about we put in a gong? Add the gong. Don't like that gong. Do you have another gong? It just went on and on and on and on until back then we had moved to these. No, it was still on tape. That's right. But I remember it was you lose one track for sympathy, so it's 46 tracks and comping, bouncing down tracks. It was just this monster of maybe 100 different tracks and sounds. Finally, to get that mix, and it was just such a big mush of everything that I had to resort to it. And I know I did this on a lot of stuff, but it doesn't matter anymore. Everybody knows. It's called the producer fader. So you set up on the mixing console a bunch of faders or a fader, and you just label them, and they don't do anything. And you have them come in, say, what do you think of the mix? They're like, I don't know. Maybe that kick drum should come up. I'm like, okay, well, how about you just push this fader up, and when you think it's good, and watch these levels here, let me know. And they would push up. They're like, yeah, now I'm feeling it. That's way better. And this happens more than you would realize in this business.
Yeah.
It's a psychosomatic thing. You're listening for the kick. You start focusing on it. You're adjusting the volume just for the kick, and now you've isolated it in your brain so it sounds louder. They're happy. I'm happy that my mix didn't get messed with, and we're getting one step sort of being done. And that's a trick that's been used, especially on bands, where the singer's like, I want the vocal a little louder. It's like, okay, we'll push this fader up until you really think it's right. Ah, yeah, there it is. Golden. And that's what mixers do. I've had it done to me. When we were mixing at A&M Records. It was a guy named Don Smith who had mixed the Stones and Tom Petty, and I kind of was obsessing about a few things as producer. And he goes, okay, it's that fader over there, but he didn't even take the time to label it. So I said, this one here? He goes, yeah. And I just punched it all the way up. he almost pissed on himself. I'm like, Don, come on. This is a trick I pull. So it was about 2.5, 3 weeks to the best I can remember of just hell. And I was so happy when the damn thing was done that I didn't ever care to even hear it again. And I loved the track, but I hate the mix. I still hate the mix. It just, I think it could have been a lot less and sounded more powerful. But then, again, tape didn't do what digital does now, so it's hard to say.
And that riff, of course, was done on keyboards, right?
Yes. Same thing with the guitars on the Power Rangers theme, all done on a keyboard. No real guitars on 99% of any of that Power Ranger stuff. No time. Had to fake it.
And what's the difference when you're mixing a keyboard versus you're mixing a guitar? What's the time element involved with guitar making or recording guitars?
Being able to do it with a keyboard means that you can record the actual keystrokes into what's called MIDI, musical instrument digital interface. So you actually see not the audio file, but you actually watch. You can watch a score, but you're usually watching little squares or rectangles that are showing you precisely what's hitting on the bar line. So if you make a little mistake, you can fix it with a mouse. And it enables you to get great precision. And it also enables you, using the sounds I created, to go back and keep that sound consistent for all the things, instead of having a guitar player come in. And even if you write down the same exact settings and he uses the same guitar and the same cable and the mics are in the same place, it always sounds different the next day. So it enabled me to be incredibly consistent, and especially not to have to deal with a guitar player, which the guys I did deal with later were great, but it's a lot of time getting it out of my head into their hands. So it's just easier for me to do it.
You would never have known the difference from a kid's perspective. Like, I've never sat down and actually watched like guitar covers of the Power Rangers theme, but I can only imagine how many times it's been covered by different YouTubers over the years.
It's quite a bit, and it's really fun to see how I would have actually played it if I could play guitar. I did fool Eddie Van Halen, so I feel pretty good about that. So if I could fool the best guitar player in the world, because he asked me, we were after Fisher got going, I was up at his house because Valerie Bertinelli, his then wife, put one of our songs in one of her movie of the week things. So she called and said, "Hey, you guys want to come up and watch it?" And I just remember Eddie pulling me off and going, "I've listened to everything. I really like this, but I got to ask you a question on this Power Ranger thing," because my son Woofy, the bass player, went on. Yeah.
To play.
He goes, "Woofy wanted me to learn it. It took me like a week. Like, how the fuck do you play this riff?" I said, "Well, if you got a piano, I can show you on the piano." And he goes, "You're fucking kidding me." And I go, "Well, the triplet thing was a tip of the hat to you for all the Van Halen stuff." He goes, "Yeah, that part was easy. It's the riff." So I'm like, "Oh yeah, the whatever they are, 64th notes, the thing's flying in the that's easy for you, but it's the riff that got you, the slower part." But I'd say we had about a month of where he and I were hanging out all the time up at his house, so it was a lot of fun.
So let's see here. So despite the X-Men thing being the best, like, to me, the most memorable one was always Power Rangers. Like, I remember you telling me when we met at Power Morphicon that it was a gift from God, basically, or a gift from, it was just coming from your soul. Did you have any idea back when you first wrote it and, they gave you that word go and told you to basically go in a room and make it in 2 hours, and, like, I just remember thinking I like it. I just thought, I like it. I'm sure they're going to hate it because it's metal, and I know they're going to probably come back and say, no, something calming or orchestral or boring or that plays down to little kids. Not that they would. That's how all the kids' music had been to that time. Even if it was another sort of theme with guitar, it'd still be like, they're so great, they smile at you. It's just so like stupid, so fucking stupid. And I've always had a lot more respect for kids, probably because I didn't have one, and probably because I seem to have popped out of the box pretty much an adult like my son. So it was, I could never stand the thought of writing little cutesy kidsy themes for anything. And so I didn't think it had a chance in hell. And then when they said they love it, I went, and then the singing thing, and then after the score going, they said, "Hey, we should have some songs." And then had to kind of bang out songs with the score and whatever other shows I was working on at the same time. But that was fun. It was always fun. Fun.
think he did about 26 songs.
Yeah, I think that main theme, it just works so well because the show is so fast-paced. I mean, sometimes I'll look down at my phone when I'm watching old episodes, and I look up and it's like, oh, they're doing something completely different than what I left my phone at. You know, like when I look down at my phone, they're doing something, and then it's like, oh, they're doing this now. It's like,
right.
It's just that I think those themes work because of how action-oriented it is and how fast-paced it is. And you created something that was fast-paced. And
it was nice to have them. And it was nice to have them cut the opening to the song, as opposed to sometimes where I get the opening and it's not cut to any tempo, and they're like, so write a theme, but it should fit to this picture. It's like, it doesn't work. The math is not working. So that was good that they went back and cut it to the theme. I'm not even sure what I saw the first night. It could have been a picture. It could have been just the name of the show. I have no idea.
How interesting would it have been if the Bulk and Skull theme had been the main theme? That's what, when you talk about stuff that's like, you know, calming or slower paced or dumb, quote unquote.
Yes.
You know, that to me, that's like stands out as like the number one, you know, goofy theme from my childhood or anybody's childhood, because I see it put in all these different YouTube videos now where it's just everybody knows what it is. What went into the making of such a goofy theme?
You know what? I looked at them, and I said, look, and they said, this, you know, there'll be obviously comic relief, and they're going to be in here a lot. Obviously, they're going to be in every episode. And I thought, well, I don't want anything too big, and there's going to be a lot of movement with this. I'm going to have a lot of stops and goes. And I remember telling Paul and Jason this a couple of years ago, because they said, that theme, we didn't know you wrote it. And I said, well, I saw Fat and Skinny, so I went for a tuba for you, and I went for a little muted trumpet for you. And then, you know, the little drum loop thing playing in between was just really easy to trigger back then. And I could slightly adjust the timing on it, however necessary. And it just seems so obnoxious and perfect for them. You know, you have the boom, 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 boom. So for Bulk, and go with this. It's just like, and I went, okay, this is done. There's their theme. And then for Lord Zed, when that came up, I just said, well, obviously we're doing Darth Vader here, so I should do some sort of thing like Darth Vader. And I love Lord Zed's theme.
Hell yeah.
I had so much fun doing that.
He scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. Like, that theme hit every note that it was supposed to. Like, it accomplished all of its goals. Like,
yeah, it was, I mean, really, I was thrilled with it. I remember when it popped out, and like I've said, these are gifts or channeling or whatever, but when they pop out like that, you know, because I originally will write them on a piano, and I'll just sit there, boom, boom, bum, 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 bum. Oh, that's it. What do I do next? Okay, change the key. Bum, 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 bum. Okay, where the hell do I go now? Where do I go now? Where to go? Change it again. It worked out really well. So that was fun. And I, you know, by this time, whatever possible sample libraries, the limited amount there was, I was able to get my hands on by this time. So I had maybe a whopping 150 sounds to pick from total, including drums and bass and everything by that time that were sampled. Now, oh my gosh, I had 12 terabyte of drives just packed with any possible conceivable sound made. There's nothing that hasn't been sampled that you can play accurately now and sound like the real thing. It's pretty amazing. But back then it was a slow, horrible process. It took 20 minutes just to load the two samplers with the sounds from these old ginormous optical drives.
Oh, I bet, yeah.
But Lord Zed was fun.
Days, man.
Yeah. But Lord Zed was fun. Bulk and Skull was fun. I'm not sure anybody else really had, themes. Obviously White Ranger and that White Ranger Tiger Power, which I hate that song. And
you do?
Yeah, I just don't like the words white and power in the same sentence. I really don't.
Oh, yeah.
I know nobody else on earth seems to feel that way, but that's why I didn't recut it when I recut the stuff in 2012. I just said, no, I can't. I just can't.
Yeah,
Everyone will know. I don't want to sing that.
Well, yeah, in the show, he uses White Ranger power. You know, it's like, yeah, that was real close. You almost got it, though.
Yeah, it would never happen today.
No, of course not.
That idea would come up at a table and that person would be escorted out by the guard that moment. It's funny. I mean, I had already gotten in trouble because of these kids that were, the parents were blaming me when the kids were fighting about, because they were listening to Power Ranger music, and Saban and Bill Clinton were super close. So Al Gore and Tipper Gore, and I got my directive: no more minor chords, and don't use words like fight or combat or anything that incites violence. And I went, no shit, from the White House, they're after me. They said, yes, and you're going to do it. And I said, well, that's no problem. That's another challenge. It's cool. All right, I'll figure out a way. And that's when more positive, uplifting, smash somebody's head in songs were created.
Yeah, like We Need a Hero. Like,
yeah.
We Need a Hero is another great one that I remember very fondly of. I don't listen to it nearly as much as I should.
It's big political songs, so yeah, all about seeing what was going on.
That was seal of approval from the White House, that song then.
Yeah, by that time. Well, they didn't have to approve. I just got the directive of,
yeah.
And I was still speaking minor chords.
I kid.
Yeah.
Will Shape It Up, Bulk and Skull ever be released? I'd love that song, but there's never been like any official release on it.
No, it was something that at the time probably nobody even thought to isolate. I know almost all the music masters were lost or destroyed, and the show masters back in when Disney took over in 2001. Nobody knows if they were thrown in a dumpster or they sit in storage somewhere, but they've been lost forever. So
wow.
The only thing that exists are those original masters, which is the original show mixes, which is a terrible shame because they could go back and remix the shows, maybe do things in stereo, just for fun.
So you're telling me the actual Power Rangers
tracks.
Show, or just the tracks?
Well, yeah, that would be where you'd have. Well, they would obviously isolating picture is easy to have that, but the actual masters where they would line up, the 100 tracks of sound effects and all these maybe 47 tracks of music, and then the sound effects. I already said. Where all this stuff, Foley and all this, where the guy in the mixing room is running maybe 8 or 10 2-inch tape machines, those are all gone.
Wow. Yeah, I thought for a minute you had said that, like, the entire shows were lost forever. I was like,
no.
What?
No. They've already been digitized. No, that's already all been digitized.
That's good. Yeah,
so that'll be around forever.
That's like the Lucas saying the original negatives to Star Wars were destroyed or something when they did the special editions. I'm like, oh my God, you got to be kidding! Like,
yeah.
I don't know. The original Star Wars trilogy, unaltered stuff. That's a whole nother debate for another day. But yeah, like if he actually did that, wow! Like what a way to. I don't know. That's just. It's almost, yeah. It
happens. Stuff like that happens. It's sad that it happened, but so I think I might be the only person on the planet that has the original WAV files to the original songs.
Ooh.
So I'm pretty sure I'm the only one, and I'm holding on to those because they're my copy, and I'm not giving those up until I hand them to my son with other one-of-a-kind stuff, or maybe two-of-a-kind stuff, but one-of-a-kind because, you know, it's maybe stuff I've signed only for him, and that he can someday, you know, call up Pawn Stars or something and go, hey, look what I have. The only person in the world with the original WAV files to the songs for the original songs. MP3s are out there galore, but nobody has the WAV files. And I know that because when they did that vinyl record a couple years ago, and I didn't even know I had them yet. And they called and said, do you have them? I said, no, just MP3s. And they said, well, okay. And I guess they just redid the Rock Adventure album with all the dialogue on it with that.
Now, what does your son think about your work on Power Rangers?
I have completely missed his age group. So he was not born. Of course, he was born in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
And by that time, I was doing some kid shows, but he wasn't watching those because they were for slightly older kids. And then we just had like a moment where I was doing stuff for SpongeBob SquarePants when he was into it. And I think I caught it just at the tail end of his interest, or maybe right at the beginning before. And then when he was 6, I was doing adult sitcoms, you know, which he had no interest in. And then as I popped back to some kid stuff, now he was too old for the Nickelodeon stuff. So he has literally missed my entire career. But to him, it's been a norm because also it's not like most musicians' houses. I don't have a shrine built to myself. And it's not the dominating thing in my life. It's just been my day work. I have some stuff up in the studio, but other than that, the house is normal and my life is normal. So it doesn't quite register with him or his friends. And his friends are all too young to go like, Power Rangers. You know, the only thing they might say is, yeah, my dad used to watch that. And I don't want to really hear that. So I kind of missed it. He's just starting to get stuff. I was playing him something the other day I'd written in 2003 for a dance company, which I put up on Facebook, but it's 14 minutes long, and I knew nobody gives you 14 minutes anymore. But I put it up there, but we were listening to it in the car, and it's really one of the first times ever where I could see him just look over, because he plays cello and he reads music and he loves it very much, but it's the first time he looked over and just went like, oh my God, this thing is so complicated. It's in so many keys, so many twists and turns. Like, you wrote this? Like, yeah, I wrote that, and that's Mom singing. And he goes, well, that I know, but he just went, this is something. So maybe he's just starting to understand my life and career, but it's not. Other than that, he never mentions it. We never discuss it. And this video game I'm doing, that might be something. You know when he's going to really care? You know how they are at that age. When their friends go, your dad's doing that, then he'll go like, yeah, my dad's doing that. As long as it doesn't suck.
So what all went into you sung all the themes, right? Like what went into like the vocals?
I would gargle with ice cold Diet Pepsi to tighten up my chords and sing. I would always sing through my throat because not using my diaphragm, so singing wrong, and just stack vocals. So I found that the sound became kind of like an Alice in Chains thing, where you at least double or triple your vocal, and then you quadruple every harmony that you're doing. All that, it created that sound that I came up with. And it was seriously out of just, it worked for my voice to sit there and stack stuff. Not uncommon in rock, not uncommon at all. So it was a ton of work. And usually I'd get to a point where I would almost lose part of my vision. It would just get blurry because of all the pressure on my sinuses. Not from being loud, just from the intensity of singing in such high ranges. It was hard. And my throat would be sore, and, it was just, it was worth it, but it was never terribly pleasant.
Now, you've left Saban, and then you came back to do work on SPD. Talk about that theme.
Disney called one day and said, we're doing Power Rangers SPD. We'd like to get back to the rock glory. And I said, great. And I remember I think it was around Christmas time of 2004. And so that was another theme that popped out really quick. I was thrilled with it. I sent it off to the guy at Disney, and I said, if you don't love this, I can't do anything better. They said, I love it. Let me play it for everybody, get back to you. And I remember I was out of town in Pittsburgh, and it was like a couple days before Christmas Eve, and they called and they said, we love it. We have a couple little notes. We want you to just add a siren and one other little thing, but other than that, it's a go. And I said, great. And I did that after I got back in town, and that one was a done deal. And I said, so can I score the show? And they said, no, silly boy. The theme composers are never allowed to score the show, and the composers on the show are never allowed to write the theme. And that's true at Nickelodeon, too, for the most part, yes. It's one of those wacky rules. I don't know why, but...
Yeah. And you also did demos for Mystic Force. Talk about what happened with those.
Well, they wanted that written. I wrote the first one, which was, again, rock, sent it off to the guy at Disney. He goes, it's perfect. Calls a few days later. He goes, everybody here loves it. And I said, great. And then a few days after that, he called me and said, so there's a couple young execs here, and they were listening to rap, and they're interested in hearing rap themes. And I said, you got to be kidding me. He said, no. I said, I'll give it a shot, but it's going to suck. And because I said, it's not what I do. So I did it, and he called back, and he said, yeah. I said, well, they picked somebody else's rap theme. He goes, I'm really sorry about that. And I said, no problem. Get used to this in the business. It's perfectly fine. So I posted that stuff at like Ranger Board or something, which really pissed Disney off. And so I got called, a week or two later. They said, you can't do that. And I said, well, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not saying these motherfuckers are going with this. I just said, these are the two things I wrote. Here's the little story, and we're moving on. Everybody, I said, you've already released that the name is going to be called Mystic Force, so I'm not violating anything there. But I think Disney was really, really embarrassed, because then they got an onslaught of emails and comments saying, are you nuts going with rap? Certainly not my, and it was just the thought of going with rap. They knew mine was horrible. Everyone was clear. We were all clear. Yeah, that's not very good. But they just loved the rock thing, and they couldn't understand why Disney had just brought back this powerful thing with SPD, and now they were going to blow it with rap. And they blew it. And I don't know if you were there, if it was the last Morphicon. I don't know where I was, but I ended up on a panel with those producers. And were you there?
I don't remember that at all.
I remember being there, and I looked over at them, and the Mystic Force thing came up, and the room kind of went like, ooh. And I just kind of, and they were happy. I just looked over. I said, hey, I told them, it's got to be good for you to be the most famous for having the worst theme in the history of the franchise.
Oh.
But it was like with a big smile, because the room was building up to that. Like, yeah, we hated that theme. And somehow, that insulted their genius artistic ability.
That's that bruised ego thing.
Yeah, which you can't have, which explains why none of them were working, which I found out later. I'm like, yeah, because, they cared. I mean, it's ridiculous. You can't care about this stuff. We're not changing the world. It's just entertainment, you know? After the panel ended, they all went one way. I went the other way. They wanted nothing to do with me. They couldn't even take a joke, you know, whatever it was, 12 years later. I mean, really, it's known. It was horrible what they ended up going with.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a gift. If you get to work doing it, you're blessed. If you're good at it, you're blessed. If you make a living at it, you're super blessed. And, you know, that's it. End of story. You're nothing special.
Which Power Rangers theme song did you enjoy the most, other than the ones that you've written? Like, have you listened to any of the other stuff at all?
No, to be honest with you, I haven't, because the only time I did is when they were recycling the old MMPR theme, and those are just lame as shit, in my opinion.
What do you think about the franchise longevity of Power Rangers?
I think it's amazing, and I think Hasbro may be able to really do something unique here, as long as they kind of keep their eye on the ball, and as long as it's a priority project. That'll be the deciding factor for what happens with Hasbro, because they have their fingers in a lot of things, and they could end up making more on the Baby Yoda toy than on the Power Rangers franchise. And then I know how we all know how corporations work. They bounce around with their passions for projects. So we will see how it ends up playing out. And if they were to call me to do anything on the show, depending on what they wanted, it would be great. If they don't, I'm fine either way. I've been there at the best time ever of the show, so I'd almost have to outdo myself, which would be a little hard.
In your opinion, what's the best composition you've created, or maybe one that you had the most fun making, or one that gets overlooked out of all the ones that you've done?
For that show, or just in general?
It could be any show, or Mighty Morphin, X-Men.
Oh, boy, that's a tough question, because there's so many different genres. I think it's going to have to really be the piano vocal ballad done with Fisher called "I Will Love You." That was just a magical night. We did 3 takes. The take that ended up doing really well was the take that I would have never picked, but the label did. So I was wrong. I love that I was wrong. And it touched a tremendous amount of lives. So I have to make that the number one as far as songwriting. As far as themes, it's really a toss-up. I've written a lot of themes, and I love most of them, but I'm going to be skewed towards Power Rangers or X-Men because they're the most famous. But I really do love Mummies Alive. I love that theme. That was a fun one to do. And that was a hard one to push through, because the owner of that company likes little, simple, childish crap. But I think I went through that on 3 or 4 shows with them, where he goes, "Well, I love what you did, but I'm going to go with someone else." And his own kids ended up going, "Are you nuts, Dad? You got to go with this theme. It's 100 times better than the other one." That's a guy named Andy Hayward that ran Deep Entertainment, who's just very nice guy, but when it comes to picking a theme, he can't. He can't. Another guy that I've written, several themes, that one being the biggest in that smaller genre of animation with him, and yet as recently as a year and a half ago, I wrote a theme, and he's like, "Nah, this isn't what I'm looking for." I said, "Yeah, you're right. This is just what kids are looking for, not you." I mean, and that's the end of the relationship with that guy. He doesn't know what he's doing, in my opinion.
Have you ever thought of going on tour with your material? I mean, it doesn't sound like you have a whole lot of time for it, but that would be really cool to see sometime. It's like you just go out there with the keyboard, you play all the old themes, and then people, there's a real nostalgia craze going on. Like I said,
I know.
Like I think you could really make some money at it.
Yeah, I was actually talking to some people about not even playing, but just going out and doing Comic-Cons, which I've never been to. And they said, "Hey, we'll set you up. You want to start doing Comic-Cons?" I'm like, "Sure." So I don't know, but I've always had performance anxiety. So in my head, in the car, in the studio, I can convince myself that, yeah, That shouldn't be too hard, and I can certainly have good pitch and my rhythm's fine. I mean, I could certainly do that. But I just know that every time there's a camera on me and I'm performing or even playing piano, I can stand in front of a group of thousands and talk completely comfortably. But the moment I have to actually play, and I've never sang in front of people in all these years, I think I would crash and burn. So I don't think it's going to happen.
That's too bad, man. I would definitely pay to see that show. That would be really, really neat.
I know, especially with all this stuff coming back. And I've thought, like, well, shit, you know, like Ozzy Osbourne sucks live and Bono sucks live sometimes. I mean, all these great singers. So why don't I go out and suck live? So and actually, like, put a full band together and do a whole thing. So who knows? I do not know. But I would have to really focus first on getting over this horrid performance anxiety. And I don't know where it comes from or why it's there. It just is. It's like something that's always haunted me my whole life, ever since I was a kid playing recitals.
You got this, man. I believe in you.
Well, thank you.
What's a movie you would like to have done music for?
Oh, man. What I would have killed to do. What would I stuff like Shawshank Redemption or The Sixth Sense, something that has an incredible amount of emotion in it without, or fear in it, without having to be restricted to a specific genre. So it would be great to do a big orchestral score that was really very much background with one reoccurring theme. So stuff like that would have been great. And for television, something like, oh no, I'm having a brain fart. Is it the Black Mirror?
Yeah.
Something like that would run different types of styles. So everything from writing the music playing from a subway speaker down to actual score, something incredibly dark filled with a ton of curiosity that's not terribly busy. Something like that would be very exciting.
What music are you listening to now? Like, what groups do you listen to right now?
Oh God, it bounces around so much. So there's everything on my playlist. I mean, I'm kind of obsessing, as I have for years, on and off with Radiohead, not the early stuff, the later stuff. But I just have my stuff on shuffle unless I'm in the mood for something specifically and pull it up on CarPlay. I'm just bouncing around, so it can go from the Toy Story movie score, Toy Story 1, over to a little bit of Black Sabbath, to old Phil Collins, some Genesis, Radiohead, touch of Pink Floyd, bit burned out on them, listened too much over the last 2 years ago. But it really runs, and then Johnny Cash. I mean, it just, I have a lot, and it really bounces around. Then when I don't want to think, classical. And then a lot of times I just sit in silence. So, but this has gone on my entire life. I have listened to almost every genre, and it changes on a whim. And that's why whenever I'm driving, somebody else should usually pick the music, because they won't understand how it's going to go from Depeche Mode to Phil Collins, or from an old Black Sabbath B-side to Eminem. But that's how my head works. It's bouncing in a million different directions musically. So I stay as diverse as, especially modern country. Well, only modern country. The old stuff is brilliant. And I don't like opera. Opera is like getting a root canal. It just makes me crazy. I respect it. It's incredibly difficult. It just pisses me. It makes me mad. It makes me angry.
And I guess the last question would be, what advice do you have for college students actively studying or learning to play music, or just young people in general for music?
that want to get in the business. Well, A, for people who just want to play who are studying, it's great that you're studying. As you get out into the business, you can let a few people know that you've studied it, depending on what field you're heading into. But a degree in music is like having a degree to be an astronaut. It means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. The rite of passage is paying dues. And over the years, I had so many young aspiring composers always contact me, and this has really been sad. They've always contacted me, how do I get in the business? I said, where do you live? Let's say they say, I live in Florida. I said, okay, first pick New York or LA. Let's say LA. Come to LA. Start going to production houses. If you're lucky enough to get a hold of composers, but just walk in and say, I make great coffee. I'm your bitch. Just that line. If you walk in and say that, they'll go, what? Again, and say, I just want to get in the business. Don't expect to get paid. Expect to be abused. You are. And really, it'll take you years. And if you're at a really successful production house, after 4 or 5 years, you might be then working with one composer who then might go ahead and take that after 6 months, take 20 minutes to sit down and listen to your stuff. And if you're good or even close to good, give you some advice. And then a year later, maybe say, hey, you want to take a crack at scoring this little teeny scene? It's a long rite of passage to work your way into this business. And every single one of them has written back and either said, well, I think I'll just get an agent. And I've said, well, I've never even had an agent. That's the way this business is. You pay your dues, and then it's word of mouth. That's how it works, and it's networking. And your reputation has to be really great. So only one's listened, and he's a good friend of mine, and he went out and knocked on the door at Hans Zimmer's place, and 3-4 years later was starting, some score on the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie. It was really, he did the thing. He walked in, he made coffee, then he was in charge of Hans's, sample library, and then started getting to know the other composers that were doing stuff, and finally started scoring stuff. Unfortunately, he had some health problems, not himself, but in his family, and rightfully so, he picked taking care of his mother over his personal career. That put a little ding in his reputation there. Not reputation, but in this business, it doesn't matter. You work. If your foot's falling off. If I'd been in the middle of a project and my arm was broken, they would have said, "Well, score it with your shoulder and your left hand. It has to be done. Use your toes." There's no all that Hollywood compassion is a bunch of bullshit. And if you can't do it, we'll call someone else. That's how it is. So the advice is, what you do is no better than what any other composer does, but maybe not. Maybe you're brilliant, in which case you've got to prove yourself, because a degree or anything else or an agent doesn't mean shit until you've paid your dues and can say, hey, I wrote this on this known project. Then you start getting work. It's the only way. It's terrible and it's hard, but it's worth it if you can do it.
Well, I think that wraps it up. Man, thanks a lot. This has been fun.
Oh, it's been great. I think this is the most detailed interview I've ever done about that whole time period. That's great. It's been great chatting with you.
Yeah, same here, man. I appreciate it again. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. Well, happy holidays to you. Yeah,
Merry Christmas, and have a good rest of your night.
Thank you very much. I'll talk to you soon, Keith.
Yep, same here.
All right, see ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.